to get some reaction to that, we can cross now live to Kyiv and speak to our correspondent Gulliver Cragg. Gulliver, we'll come to Blinken's visit in a moment, but just first of all, has there been any reaction today in the Ukrainian capital to our top story here, which is the re-election of Emmanuel Macron?
Well, this French election was really followed very closely in Ukraine because of the fear that Vladimir Putin's friend Marine Le Pen might win. So people were always talking to me about it in the weeks running up to the election. Then there was an explosion of relief, basically, yesterday evening all across Ukrainian social media. And I spoke earlier to the former Ukrainian foreign minister who said that he really does see Macron's re-election as a hope for Ukraine because he thinks that Macron can be a good hinge, as he put it, intermediary between the United States and Ukraine. And also he thinks that the fact that Emmanuel Macron has kept up talking to Vladimir Putin even after the invasion and insists on still maintaining this contact with the Russian leader, that is on the whole a good thing. Although in Ukrainian media, Emmanuel Macron is frequently derided for this, for having these conversations with Vladimir Putin that seem to come to nothing. The Ukrainian establishment thinks that it's nevertheless probably a good thing that Emmanuel Macron does this. And then they're hoping that the French president will be able to lead Europe towards imposing at least a partial embargo on imports of Russian oil and gas. It's going to be interesting to see how far Emmanuel Macron is able to persuade the Germans to go in that direction.
And Gulliver, on Blinken's visit then, we heard him say there that American diplomats are returning to the country. They should be back in Kyiv sometime relatively soon. How significant do you think that is, given the way that the war appears to be turning?
Well, let's wind the clock back 2 months. Who would have thought 2 months ago, in the first days of the war, when people were predicting that Kyiv would fall, there was this huge column of Russian armoured vehicles advancing on the Ukrainian capital, and people thought it was going to fall within days. Who would have predicted that the US Secretary of State and the Defense Secretary would even be here in the Ukrainian capital 2 months after this invasion started? And they're not the only leaders of allied countries to have visited Kyiv in recent days. And it obviously shows that the security situation here in the Ukrainian capital is very much improved, and that's because the Ukrainians managed to force out the Russian troops that were trying to take the capital and the surrounding region. The offensive, though, by Russia does still continue, and it's very intense all the time in the east and south of the country. But there's a sort of degree of confidence that for now, at least, the Russians are focusing their efforts on the east and south, and that it's probably safe for the diplomats to return to Kyiv. And of course, it's an extremely important gesture symbolically for Ukraine to see these diplomats coming back. The United Kingdom has also said that it will reopen its embassy in Kyiv.